So whom I dedicate this award is really, in addition to my family and friends, is those resilient people in those most of broken places who show up and who say, yes, I am in. I want to heal it, and I want to move it, and I want a better future for my children. So, love you guys. So, thank you. So, what I want to also say is this is a reflection. Often, when I first came and we started this thing at another place where I did get my degrees, there was this tendency to learn quick. And so there was this great choice of books. 7 Steps to Reconciliation. 7 Steps to the Healing. And doesn't work. Do not Amazon it or Google it. But what I will say, I always say these are the reflections that are never prescriptive. I can only describe the journey I've been on and the privilege of this work and the great teachers I have had. And so I want to start it with what it is about. It's storytelling. So I go back to my hometown, my sister's hometown, literally 100 meters from where we live, is a little bridge. And on that bridge, in year 1914, an assassination happened. And that thing led to the First World War. We still call it Great War back in Europe. And so my hometown, 100 meters within my vicinity, a place that my own grandmother never left, for example. So in terms of generations, I now been to continents except Antarctica, and my grandma never left Sarajevo. Never. So she has seen the arch of 20th century wars. But when that war happened, from 1914 to 1918, the war was still fought in those old ways, which is the young men, mostly not willingly, but again, they were young men, who were given a gun or some kind of a weapon, given a short training, and they were shipped of these battlefields. And then for the 4 next years, they would be shooting at each other. But it was from the trenches, and it was kind of disciplined and organized warfare. You can even watch a great film called The Christmas Break, where it's about the soccer game, football match between the British and German troops during one Christmas night. So the point is, horrible. War ain't good one, don't get me wrong. Anybody, whoever says the glorious war, crap. None are good. But the point about that war it was done in the old-fashioned way, where young trained men would shoot at each other for years. 90% of people who died in that war were these young men. People would literally, civilians would go and watch those battles. They would not be affected. You fast forward 100 years. The Arc of Sarajevo is in our last war that I lived through, in which my grandmother, who was born at the first one, sadly died in this last one, the figures are now reversed. 90% of people who died are civilians, are women, children, young men who wake up, and as I always say, the war just came up upon me. People in Rwanda who have no clue how that genocide occurred. People of Sri Lanka, people of all the world, who literally wake up to one day to slaughter. And so the point is, the warfare has completely changed. How we think about peace has not. We still go about the same old business in which the nation state and all that wonderful international relations complexity is the way to go. And I really find it challenging because it lacks the third quality, which is creativity. By the way, she stole all of my qualities that I didn't mention anyway, and you did mention the creativity, which essentially this quest that I really don't get, which is this idea of identity and nationalism. That all that you have to do is be born. And where and to whom you're born to pretty much determines the rest of your life story. And even as a Bosnian in Sarajevo, and our family is mixed, and I had my best friend being a Serb, I never really got that. And to this day, so the fourth or whatever quality of humility, I just struggle with it. I don't get it. I really don't get nationalism. But what I do get is this concept, and we all might remember the whole Maslow pyramid from good old biology, all of us paid attention in science, where at the bottom are those critical needs like food and water, and then you have shelter, and then you want to get good clothing and all that kind of stuff. But at the top are those self-fulfilling needs, of which identity is such a core need. So I do recognize that it's almost, in many ways, for many people, nationalism is the force that gives people meaning. And so that is the challenge of this current time, where we see this not just in the United States, but sadly all across Europe. It's very strong in Latin America, Africa, etc. So for me, it's how do we take that understanding, but also for our field, and I'm in an academic town, and I'm here with Irvin and Lori, who had figured this out way better than I have, in terms of understanding and explaining this to people. But my challenge with our field, sometimes we tend to be long on analysis, and sometimes too short on action. So what is it that kind of figured this out? And so for me, the one thing I want to kind of counter is this understanding that, oh, it's all poverty-driven. It's all economic causes. And when you look at the interventions done by many organizations, it's really done under this assumption that if we eliminate poverty, if we give jobs, particularly young men, if we give them jobs, all these problems would go away. And again, my reflection, my observation is that really what I think is almost we need to flip that pyramid upside down. That poor people never go to work by itself. Half of this planet wakes up at less than $2 a day. And I can tell you my mother-in-law lives in the poorest parts of Guatemala. And those parts tend to be the safest. So the reality is something larger is at play that is forcing people, this concept of blood and nation, and trying to get us all riled up about things that are, in my opinion, entirely social constructs. So the good news about it, it's not in our bloodlines. It's not predetermined. It's not history. It's most often, in all of our cases, manipulation by these ideologues who have figured out a way to stay in power, to grab power, and to really manipulate the historical narratives of the hurt, but also the present fears of people, to really try to pit us against the other. And so that's where this idea comes, in my opinion, of, it's the good news at the end. It's all made up. It's social contract. It's not in here or here. It's here. And that's why I love Karuna's work. Because Karuna is courageous enough to go to the hardest of places with the most of hurt and suffering, yet willingness to have those hard conversations. So it's not about economic empowerment, or it's not about, let's have youth, I adore you, love youth, have two. But it's really about how do we really engage into, we did hurt each other, we need to indeed talk about it, we need to, however, still figure out ways to jointly move on together. I mean, that's like amazing. To this day, it's like, it is insane. It is insane. But guess what, people, it works. I'm a testament to it, my wife is testament to it, and again, thousands of people that I have had privilege to witness indeed. So, what are the qualities that I think are now, in this time, the most important? And I always call this the quest to expand the realm of the possible. Because every time we show up, people say, we can't do that here. That's not possible. Or we could never sit with the other. And then, step by step, conversation by conversation, these days, Skype call by Skype call, you're getting closer to breaking through the realm of the possible. And so I want to bring to the room sort of my expansion over the last 25 years of the stories where I had seen that, of it's not, you're insane, don't try, don't come. And obviously it all goes back to the Bosnia and to the start of what you had done and what they're still doing. Amra and Lahidin, whom you might have glanced, are my dearest friends, and it has just been an honor to see us come back home. But the three kind of brief vignettes is one starts with Liberian child soldiers. And I had a privilege, and I still work on another sister organization called Search for Common Ground. And we have a project that I help oversee on reintegration of child soldiers. Like what we see in, I think it was Senegal that we had. Same methodology we had in Nigeria. And here are those, literally there were 10, 12-year-olds, mostly boys, there were some young girls. Some of them were kidnapped at the age of 4. Their first task was go and kill their family. So one would think you can only come and nothing but cry and despair. And then you sit with them, and then you are persistent, and you understand that in terms of people say, well, peace is a process we go around. Like what you just said. I know we will never get there. I know we will never see peace. But I have seen plenty of pieces of peace that make me so convinced at this day and age that I'm sitting here. It's the only calling I was able to do. And again, to watch these young men mostly transform from people who hurt their communities to the amazing peacemaker and peace builders who literally would roll up their sleeves and they built this huge amazing project called Palala huts, which are essentially literally huts in Africa with Islam. But their main purpose is mediation. So it's a community mediation center for non-violent resolution of disputes. The second are my Afghani imams. So a place that Paula and Olivia and I worked some together, but I had called my second home is Afghanistan. And in that country, they have known nothing but war. For the last 45 years, they had not seen a day of peace. But there are these transition times, and that's where we were there. And in Afghanistan, we had workshop with these imams, who are the most conservative mullahs, whose interpretation of life is literally how they were told what is in Quran. They don't know how to read. Certainly they don't know how to read Arabic. It's the oral tradition that tells them this is what the book says. And then when you obviously engage them and you actually do help them understand the book and the messages of peace that it shares, just as the Bible and Talmud do, what they were able to do is, to this day, they're using the pulpit of the mosque. Once a month, every Friday, they preach peace. And they preach tolerance in their communities. And so, I will come to el fin, as we say in Espanol, with some of these points of what this reflection has led me to. The first one is FIN, which is how do we understand the thing of really understanding other people's fears. And so when you say Paula walks in other people's shoes, what she had taught me is really start by deeply in your gut understanding what are they afraid of. What are the interests that are driving these hard positions, because we all hear of blah, 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 blah. What they need to understand is what at the end of the day is end. Those are needs of people that are driving this behavior. And oftentimes even the most compassionate of us stay on the surface and don't truly understand the fears, interests, and needs from where these other people are coming from. The next one is this other, being English as whatever, fifth language, I make stuff up. So another, I guess, acronym, it's BAD, bad. And BAD stands for but, avoidance, and denial. And I start with but, because in every country, sometimes in every household, even when we are willing to do some kind of piecework. So yes, maybe I did something wrong, comma, but they started it. But they are way worse. But let me tell you the hurt they inflicted on us. And that happens everywhere. And how to recognize and try to stop it is by working on really the thing, sadly many conflict resolvers and peace builders. We try to avoid conflict. It's not comfortable. And so when we work in these countries, for me, it's really that we have to understand avoidance never works. It does not disappear. As Irvin wrote, there is things that transgenerational trauma and all that stuff. So avoiding it is never a solution. Sadly, many people take what I call the sweet poison of denial. And denial means, like what we heard what the story was when you got my Serbs unstuck. And in many countries, we very quickly, and sadly I think many Americans have drunk quite a lot of it recently. That it's all fine, it's all working. Unemployment is less than 3%. So denial is also a huge problem. In which again, getting it out for us to engage, however, constructively. And to do that, we need batteries. So my batteries are also running on AAA. The first A is for acknowledgement. And you heard that story. Acknowledgement is so powerful. Because most of these people that Paula, Olivia, and I had worked with, and me myself being one, sometimes you think what happened to me is just so not normal, that by naming it, it makes me crazy. Right? And imagine being the perpetrator. It really makes you crazy. So most of us never get to that first step of acknowledgement. The second step is apology. And too rarely any of us say sorry, not enough. And so apology really allows us from that acknowledgement space to the apology of healing the wounds to that final element of A, of action. Where what we have seen through the Karuna's work of 25 years, when people really get it, when they do acknowledge, some of them apologize, but they always jointly take action for bringing peace into systemic solution, is what I will finish with. Instead of always blaming and shaming, which also some of us are quite at, I prefer to raise and praise. And to try to really say, in the brokenness, and again, trust me, we have seen as broken as it gets, to see, to raise and praise both people, organizations, communities, and countries that have figured it out. And while my Bosnia still struggles, Rwanda is on the major journey, United States has the challenges. At the end of the day, for those of us who had seen it and who have had the privilege of journeying it, it is probably the greatest privilege to continue to witness that individual and collective transformation. And I will then end, because how of a Bosnian would I be if I didn't bring a return gift? So I do have for Paula and Karuna. It's not a photo, because she died 6 centuries ago. So it's a graphic or something of the last queen of Bosnia, the great Catherine. And she wasn't like the Russian. This one was quite a peacemaker. And to the last minute, she was trying to make the deals with the Turks and others. And so she is known not only as our last queen and kind of the most popular, but also as the person who walked the path of how do I avoid war. And so, because that's your path, I'm going to give you my queen.